and thank you for that kind introduction. How marvellous it is to be in the company of ambitious, inspiring women and to start the day with a song. It's my privilege to be here with you today. India is a country very close to my heart. There is truly nowhere like it anywhere else in the world. Vibrancy and entrepreneurialism are everywhere, and it has a boundless energy that plays a huge part in India's incredible rise as a geopolitical and economic powerhouse. But I'm here with you this morning to discuss a critical stumbling block. As I'm sure you may know, India has one of the lowest rates of female labour force participation in the world. It's the lowest in South Asia, with the exception of Pakistan. According to the ILO, less than a third of Indian women 15 years or older are working or actively looking for a job. India's female labour force participation rate is uniquely low for all levels of education, with 65% of Indian women with college degrees out of work. To make a comparison, in Bangladesh, 41% of women graduates are out of work, and in Indonesia, it's only 25%. So what does this mean? It means that India has a precious opportunity that it's overlooking and underutilizing. And that opportunity is the boundless potential of Indian women as business owners, as job creators, and as leaders in their communities. The statistics on women's economic empowerment in India make for disappointing reading. But we must remember that women are so much more than one-dimensional statistics. The ability, energy, and promise is there. And I can look out in this audience and I can see it. As industry leaders, as influencers, as change makers here in this room, you are helping to lay the groundwork for other women to follow. Because the truth is that progress on gender equality is unacceptably slow the whole world over. The World Economic Forum's latest Gender Gap Index revealed that inequality between men and women is growing, particularly in economic participation. In fact, it's estimated that women will have to wait 217 years to enjoy full economic parity. To my mind, that's 216 too many. Despite this bleak prediction, I remain an eternal optimist. I truly believe that we are at a tipping point in women's history, one where our voices are becoming increasingly synchronized on issues which unite us. As campaigns like Me Too and Time's Up are showing, our collective cries of enough is enough are starting to echo their ways up the corridors of power. Many of you know I'm a lawyer by trade, and the fundamental value that has guided my life and career in human rights law is the belief that everyone has the right to participate equally in their societies and their communities. I'm particularly passionate about gender equality, partly because of the way I was raised. I grew up in an ordinary working-class family in Liverpool in the north of England, but I was so lucky to be born at a time when opportunities were opening up for women, opportunities that my grandma and my mother never had. My mother and grandmother were very aware of the opportunities that they missed out because they both left school at the age of 14. So they were determined that my sister and I would have the best education. It was actually my grandmother who got me first interested in the law, because there was a very famous woman barrister that was very rare in those days, and she came from Liverpool. And she used to appear in our local courts, and her name was Rose Howbron, QC. And my grandma used to go to the public gallery of the courts and watch her, and she'd come home and tell me about this incredible woman, and I loved hearing those stories. And I worked hard at school, and ended up the first person in my entire family to go to university. But you know, it's not enough just to educate a woman. She also needs the opportunity to put that learning into good use. Now, I started out as a young lawyer in 1976. That was a landmark year for me, but it was also for the legal profession in the UK, because it was the first time the number of women called to the bar reached double figures. But frankly, the culture at the time was deeply sexist. It was standard for firms to tell young female lawyers that we just don't take women. And the most progressive firms might say, oh yes, we do take a woman, but I'm afraid we've already got one, and we couldn't possibly take another. And at the time, one of the leading textbooks said that women weren't suited to being advocates because their voices weren't loud enough. I'm afraid I disproved that theory. Education opened up all sorts of amazing opportunities for me, and that's why I feel so passionate about making education a reality for every single woman and girl across the world. But there was another key event in my upbringing that influenced how I saw my place in the world. After my father left us when I was 8 years old, my mother and grandmother were the ones who had to support the family. And so I soon realized how important it was for women to be financially independent. Because when a woman is able to make and control her own money, she can make the decisions about her life and about the lives of her children. And this insight was reinforced during my time at number 10 Downing Street, when I was lucky enough to travel the world. And I met countless women in India and beyond who were striving to set up businesses to create better lives for themselves and their families. Yet these women faced a huge number of legal and cultural barriers. But you know, despite these hurdles, they weren't going to take no for an answer. And their courage and their determination was truly inspiring. I realized that with the right support and the right tools, these women could go on to achieve amazing things, not just for themselves, but for their families and their communities too. And that's why in 2008 I established the Cherie Blair Foundation for Women to support women entrepreneurs in the developing and emerging economies, precisely because I knew the barriers for women in these countries are so much higher. To date, we've supported 140,000 women from over 100 countries, whether they're based in Kigali or Kanpur. All these women are strong, resilient, and creative. And it's fantastic to see growing acknowledgement of the power and potential of women entrepreneurs here in India. Just last year, I was speaking on a panel at the Global Entrepreneurship Summit in Hyderabad, where the theme was Women First, Prosperity for All. And I'm constantly reminded of the truth of this statement by the stories of the women that we support. Women like Hiresha from Uttarakhand, who took part in her We Can India project with the US Embassy in India and Dhriti. Hiresha owns a mushroom farming enterprise and has trained over 1,000 women in mushroom farming. She also buys produce from around 250 village-level mushroom cultivators. 150 of these were women she originally trained, who now have steady income from their work. Or take Ramita from Delhi, who also took part in our We Can India project. She survived an acute disease in her childhood, and she has dedicated her life to health. So she founded an online platform to build and sell medical devices effectively, efficiently, and ethically. Since taking part in We Can India, she has gone on to win a PayU Inspiring Woman Entrepreneur Award. Like these women, everyone in this room has the power to make a difference. Regardless of your sector or sphere, here are a few guiding principles that I think you could all apply to unleash that power of this amazing 500 million. Be the change you wish to see in the world. I firmly believe in this saying. Many of you in the room this morning will benefit from having unique platforms and positions of influence. I know I have. Using these tools to create positive social change is not just important, it is imperative. We all have a responsibility to give back. If you're a creative professional, think, how can you harness your talents to improve the way women are depicted in the media? Consider, how can you use your platform to reach decision makers? If you're a CEO, be proactive in recruiting a diverse board which includes women and other underrepresented minorities. Make tackling the pay gap or unfair conditions your priority. Support other women. Madeleine Albright once famously said, "There's a special place in hell for women who don't help other women." It's so true. Create supportive, professional networks for women in your sector and in your workplace. Listen, learn, and share with one another. Celebrate and elevate each other. Hire one another. Investing in women is often the best investment you can make because empowered women empower others. For example, in my foundation's online mentoring program, 80% of our mentees pass on what they've learned to others, and 50% of them go on to become mentors themselves. Number 3, think inclusive and act inclusive. The feminist author and activist Audre Lorde once wrote, "I am not free while any woman is unfree, even when her shackles are very different from my own." While there are challenges we all share as women, there are so many differences as well in our experiences. That's why it's so important that we push for a diversity of women's voices to be heard. We are not all the same. For example, women with disabilities, women from marginalized communities, LGBT women, women from different socio-economic backgrounds. Are these voices being considered within your sphere of influence? It's important that when we think, talk, and act on gender, we also go beyond gender. Which takes me to number 4. Enlist male allies. Now this might be the hardest feat on the list, and I'm very glad to see a scattering of brave men in this room. But you know, the reality is men are often the gatekeepers of power. They are often the source of many of the challenges we face as women. So they must be a part of the solution. And men can play an incredibly positive role in pushing for change. At this year's World Economic Forum in Davos, Bollywood superstar Shah Rukh Khan proclaimed that gender inequality was primitive and stupid. Last night, our host spoke of his daughter's experience. Believe me, the daughters of many men are our most powerful weapon. More men need to understand how rigid patriarchal norms and the toxic masculinity hinders everyone. Everyone. It stops both men and women from being able to reach their full potential or to live emotionally fulfilled and rounded lives. I'm sure that many of you are already doing so much to celebrate and advance women in your own lives and communities. We must continue our fight until our gender no longer limits our opportunities for ourselves and for the generations to come. Something I feel even more passionately about now that I'm a grandmother myself. It's been a real pleasure and honor to be here with you in this room full of amazing, dynamic people, most of them women, and who are all committed to unleashing that full power of 500 million. I am so excited to see what the future holds for India's women and for women all over the world. I know that you're going to have a fantastic rest of the day, and I look forward to sharing it with you. Thank you.